stage.
Right here, I'm doing a little bit of a trick here. So I got some round tubing, and I want to split it in half, right? So it's like a log, almost split in half like this. So what I did is I took it and put it in this channel here, which is about the same width as my tubing, and it has the right height for me to mark the center line. So basically what I'm doing is all I got to do is clamp it up to here, and then I can scribe all the way down each side, and it works out slick. I got perfect scribe lines on both sides, because otherwise you don't know exactly where to cut on each side if you don't have some kind of fancy machine or a mill or something like that. Just a side note here, you don't have to have the exact size channel that you necessarily need, exactly half of this tube. So say if this tube is 2.5 inches and you have really any type of channel that you can set this in that's the right width this way, you can just space it up with, say, something like some sheet metal, or if you have more tubing. Say if this, for my example here, this is 1.5 inches tall from the outside here to the inside here where this sits. So that would technically put me off 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch each way. So I just took some 1/4 inch plate and have it in the center of this, and then just have it all clamped down. So this is perfectly centered on this round tube, right? It's really hard to cut round tube and have it be nice. So that's just a little trick. Use spacers. Figure something out. There's always a way to do it. Now you can see that I cut this slit out 12 inches long, just a tad bit over 1/4 inch wide. And now I can just place this right over my little brace, line up to where it needs to be, and this brace sinks into this hole. That allows me to save time and not have to keep taking this off and grinding this piece flat. And it also gives me an easy area to weld to, because obviously you can't weld this and the inside of this at the same time, or after each other, because you can't get to one another after you do the one. So this will work out nice. It helps me keep it centered and all that. So I'll just go ahead and plug weld this all up, and then the center is reinforced. You can see 1/4 inch plate in there. So this right here is why I always keep my scrap pieces around. They may be kind of in the way sometimes, but look at this fit right here. Down here, it's almost like it's made for it. Perfect. All I gotta do is trim this down and then put a little piece of this splice down in here. And this was just something that I cut off of one of my boxing plates, so it works. As you can see, I'm working on this front axle some more here. So basically I got this flat piece here, and I got the reinforcing bar in there, and then I got a couple welds on there holding it all in place for now. I'm not going to do finish welds until all of it's done, make sure it all kind of works out. So right in here you can see that there's this gap, right? Well, since I'm going to be connecting these two pieces with a flat plate, I'm going to try and fill in this gap with some weld. So you see right here, I'm filling it in with some weld. Here's some weld in here. That just kind of gives it a little bit more strength. Inside here, you don't want to fill all this in because it's gonna just gonna get too hot and warp. But that's why I have this spacer up in there, like so. So you can see right here, there's a gap. Well, if you weld in this gap, then you're not gonna get in the way of your fitment of your part here. So you can see what I'm doing. I got that weld in there, right? Then all I gotta do, I got this kind of trimmed up. See, I got this stick in there like so. Press it in. It's a nice fit. You can see there's some gap there for penetration. Then you kind of work your way down and make it all flat. This will keep the pieces, these pieces together this way, so these can't stretch apart. It'll just make this whole thing very strong. And then I'll add a little piece here. And it's just take your time, you know, and it'll turn out nicely. I'm excited. I'm kind of happy, or I'm anxious to see how this turns out. I have all this stuff tacked up, all the little spacers tacked up and in there. Now basically what I'm going to do is, now that everything's tacked, I'm going to do about 1/8 of a pass. Actually, that's 1/4 of a pass from here to here on each side. Let it cool completely and then come back and do more. Because it's the tube axle, these are pretty easy to warp, so I'm going to take my time on them. Basically how you kind of get these to line up right is you just kind of tweak them. I'm trying to avoid that because I just bought this axle new, so it's perfectly straight. So if I can do this without having to mess with it or align it or anything like that, that's beneficial for me. And then once I get all these welded up, that means that this really isn't going to go anywhere. So I can do, I can weld up this and get a little bit more heat in it without risking warping it, because this pipe that I added here is also adding strength so that it doesn't warp as easy, or doesn't bend as easy. It's gonna look pretty nice once it's all ground down, welded up, and it's functional.
Take it to the next plateau. Let's get it.
Ignore all this stuff. That's the one I just did. Basically what I did was you just have the wire speed a little lower than you normally do if you're just gonna do a weave like this, and you slowly go back into it like this. Turns out pretty nice. Could probably trick some people. That right there is one of my best looking TIG beads. I found that what works best is if you have a bigger gap like this, because then it looks like it's a hotter weld. See, that one right there was flat, or it was there wasn't much of a gap there. This one, there was the same amount of gap as right here. So another tip, make your weld beads look nice. Got this axle done. You can see that extra modification that I added there. I got about 16 hours into that. Started out as a 2-inch pipe. Now it's formed to this on the bottom. It's got a flat spot on the top. I think it looks really good. I'm really excited. I was a little worried about this axle at first, but now that I got all that beef in there, I'm not worried at all. Now you can see that I got this axle mocked up in here, and I'm gonna start doing my bag mounts. So you can see that I have this bag mount on the frame here, or on my axle here. Okay, I just bought this bag mount online. It was $11.50 a piece from Chassis Tech. And then I have these top plates here, and they just welded the underside of this crossmower that I built. But in order to set these bags up, I'm gonna set it up so that my bag is about halfway expanded at ride height. That way I have enough PSI to lift it, but you still don't want the bags at full PSI at ride height, because the lower the PSI, the softer the ride. So what I'm doing here is I want my bag to be at half stroke at ride height. So I got my jack set here at ride height, or to simulate my tires. So I'm running a 28.5-inch tire approximately. So I got this set at about 14.25 inches from the center of the spindle down. And then I got my frame 5 inches off the ground, which is what I want my ride height to be at. So right here, if I take a measurement from here to here, this is only about 6.5 inches. Well, the fully compressed size of these bags is about 3 inches. So that gives me about 3.5 inches of travel on the stroke. Well, these have about an 8-inch stroke or a 9-inch stroke. So I want somewhere in the middle. So I'm gonna want 4.5 extra inches from the fully collapsed up to here. So that's 4.5 plus 3, which would be 7.5. So basically this is telling me that I have to get the bottom of this bag down an inch, or I have to somehow create more room between here, about an inch. The way I'm gonna do that, you can see this big gap under here. I'm gonna actually take this and section out about 7/8 of an inch, or 7/8 to 1 inch. Okay? That way I can get this as low as I can get it, and I'll have more air pressure at my ride height, which will allow me to have a firm ride, but not too firm. This is all kind of a guessing game, and it's all kind of really learning as you go. There's really no universal way to do this, because everybody wants different ride. Everybody has a different classification of a nice ride. Some people like it really soft. Some people like it stiff. It kind of depends what you're gonna do with the car. So for me, I'm just doing a happy medium, and then I can adjust based off my tire size how much PSI I need to lift this frame up 5 inches. So I'm just kind of doing a good guessing method, thinking all my options through before I do anything, and that'll lead to a better end result. Now you can see that I have one of these sectioned. I took out 7/8 of an inch. Basically how I did that was I just took this, clamped it in the vise, cut out the section that need to be cut out, beveled the edges on this and then on this. Okay, and then I'm gonna take it out of the vise, set it over here, and then I'll use a square, and I'll make sure this is square and centered in the bracket, because you notice that when you section it, it's gonna get narrower, right? Just because it was on an angle before, but I'll blend it all in afterwards. So I take it, set it down flat, get a square on there, and tack this up both sides, and then let it cool a minute, and then weld it. Pretty simple. Do it to both sides, so you end up getting these cutouts here. Save these for scrap or something. And then it's shorter, so you can get your airbag closer to your axle, which in turn will give you more room to work with inside. Got a new little addition to the shop here. Just a cheap Harbor Freight 12-ton press. I ended up getting it for like $100. It was $130, and then I had a 20% off coupon. I bought this just because it's kind of general purpose, so I've used it for wheel bearing already. These are nice because you can kind of do a lot of things with them. If you're creative, you can figure out how to bend like 1/4-inch plate or anything like that. I'm also gonna try and make like some kind of an adapter to make this into like a pipe bender kind of deal. Ideally, I'd like to build my roll cage here, because I like to build everything here. So if I figure out a way to make this die and then make it like a roller set that comes out this way, and then I can have up to 90-degree bends on my pipes, that'll be cool. If I can't figure that out in the next week or so, then I'll just have to pay a shop to bend the tubing for me quick, because I'm gonna run a roll cage in this bad boy. But yeah, this is a pretty good little press for $100. I'm happy with the construction of it. Not bad. I'm not worried about anything breaking. And then these bottle jacks are only like $35 if this ever does go out. Theoretically, this is the only thing I could ever see going out on this because, I mean, the rest of it's steel and bolts. That doesn't really go bad. One complaint I have about this handle doesn't have like anywhere to put it, you know, there's nowhere to put it. I mean, you could like have it sitting like this, I guess, but ideally you'd like to have like something just to clamp it on like that. I'll add something. Takes up minimal space. All in all, good deal for $100.